When you think of Insomniac, a certain friendly purple dragon is probably the first thing that pops into your head. But it wasn't Insomniac's first game. Insomniac's first game was a Doom clone called Disruptor. When you consider that Insomniac would later go on to make the Resistance franchise, a gory first-person shooter, Spyro starts looking like the odd one out. However, for a studio as important as Insomniac, no one seems to even acknowledge Disruptor as a game. Which is strange, because whenever another studio has a somewhat forgotten game, it seems to get more attention. For example, Bungie's Marathon. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Disruptor on the original PlayStation. Hey, Jarek here, and I find it amusing just how many studios got their start making Doom clones. If anything, it's a testament to how important Doom was at the time and still is today. However, Disruptor could have been a very different story. You see, this game was originally going to release on the 3DO. Insomniac realized that the 3DO was a flop and jumped ship, instead reworking Disruptor for the PlayStation 1. This would end up being Insomniac's best choice for their career moving forward, because while Disruptor overall was considered a commercial failure, not selling anywhere near as much as they wanted, in the long run, this got them connections with Sony and the PlayStation brand. Spyro ended up being a mascot for the PlayStation for years. So short term it may not have seemed like a success, but long term it certainly was. Just like how working with IntoTheAM has been a success long term for both of us. I accept their sponsors basically on the spot because I do really like their products. I say this every integration, but I wear these things all over the place. They're soft, they're comfortable, they stretch, they don't rip, they don't have a tag scratching the back of your neck, and most importantly, they look good no matter what you're doing. And they're currently on sale for both basic tees and essentials, so they're comfortable, durable, and at a good price. They're also constantly adding in new products. They recently have been doing a lot of sort of camping looking gear, and I really like these. I'm wearing one right now. These are just really pleasant on the eyes, a lot of colors, they just look good. This current sale ends on the 21st, but don't fret if you're watching after that date. You can go to my link IntoTheAM.com/dragonshirts to get 10% off site-wide. They also have their usual sales. You can get 3 graphic tees for $60 or 3 basic tees for $45. And as a reminder, they have tank tops and hoodies and a bunch of other stuff. It's not just t-shirts. You know, like hats, if this is your thing. I wasn't lazy and shaved my head before I started making this video, so like, I don't need to wear a hat right now. Anyway, a huge thanks goes to IntoTheAM for sponsoring this video, and let's go back to Disruptor. Let's start with the elephant in the room. The recording I'm getting is through emulation, which is just much easier to record than from an actual PlayStation. I'm emulating this game with RetroArch, and I'm taking full advantage of being able to increase the internal resolution. I'm also using a widescreen hack. This is a true widescreen hack. Look at how the monitor doesn't suddenly stretch out. It is actual widescreen. The sprites of the weapons do stretch a little bit, unfortunately. Can't really get around that, but the actual 3D worlds is proper widescreen. So keep in mind that this is going to look a lot clearer than it did on the original PlayStation. That said, I didn't install any mods to have better textures or any of that, so this is the same thing you would have seen on the original PlayStation, just in widescreen and in a much bigger resolution. And for an original PlayStation game, this looks pretty darn good. Something as simple as having good textures can make you not realize that you're walking down the same hallways over and over again. Variety is important when it comes to environments, and this game nails that. You may start with concrete hallways, but eventually you're going to be going to one of the moons of Jupiter, going to Mars, or going to Antarctica. And while I can't speak from personal experience, all the reviews I see from back in the day says it runs very well on the original PlayStation. Granted at 30 FPS, but I wouldn't have expected that. I would have expected FPS drops all over the place. With the emulator, I'm running this at 60 and not having any frame drops or any issues, but that's to be expected. And since I'm emulating, I get another huge advantage: being able to change my controls. Yeah, we hadn't really figured out this first-person shooter on consoles thing back in '96 when this game launched. FPS controls back then were wild on a controller. The left D-pad turned you left and right and moved you forward and back, using X to shoot. Straight buttons were on the shoulders, so you'd have to hold L and R to strafe. We really did not have a standard dual analog stick control scheme until Halo Combat Evolved came out years later. However, through an emulator, I can rebind things to get something close to more modern controls. So I rebound the left and right on the D-pad over to my right analog stick, I put the strafe left and strafe right buttons on the D-pad, and I rebound shoot to the right trigger. And hey, there you go. Mostly modern controls. Now, we didn't have 360 degrees of motion. I had 4, but like, I didn't notice too much. It worked perfectly fine. As for aiming, this is a Doom clone. You can only look left and right, not up and down, so this also worked fine. Plus, the game is pretty lenient with how much you need to be aiming at the enemy when you shoot. It's pretty much going to hit the enemy if you're looking in their direction. I imagine for the day the default controls were pretty good, but just rebinding a few controls made this feel perfectly fine. I was surprised at how well it handled. Usually when it comes to Doom clones on the PlayStation 1, there's some really odd acceleration in the aiming and it's just difficult to do anything, but this felt fine. Now, they did a few things differently from Doom, and one of those things is adding a jump button. But platforming in this game can be pretty awkward. You have absolutely no aerial drift at all. Whatever direction you are jumping when you jump, you're just gonna keep going that way. I know that's more realistic, but this is a video game where you're traveling from planet to planet and shooting aliens, so I don't think that matters. I'm not asking to be able to turn 90 degrees in the air, but at least allow me to slow myself down if I hold back in the air. Thankfully, this game does not put an emphasis on platforming, so it's not really an issue, just a mild annoyance at worst. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about this story. This was that time in gaming. We're moving to discs now, we have so much space. Live action is the way to go. And to be fair, at the time, that seemed like the correct choice because early 3D animations were very primitive and didn't look great. If you had enough space to do live action and you were able to do live action well, why not? I mean, hell, it's not like they would know I'd be scrutinizing everything they're doing almost 30 years later. These cutscenes are very 90s.
Just remember, think fast, shoot fast, and kick ass.
This is the most 90s thing I've ever seen. They're incredibly low budget, and it's almost like they were directed by the same people that made Nickelodeon Guts and American Gladiator. Yet at the same time, part of me loves this. It's just so 90s. It's goofy in probably the most entertaining way. But more importantly, this is a Doom clone with a story, and shooters weren't really going that way yet. It would be another 2 years before Half-Life completely rewrote how stories would work in video games. Yet, here we are in '96 with full live-action cutscenes and a story to follow. And you can easily follow it, as goofy and poorly written as it is. You could tell these cutscenes were made on a budget. They used the same transition at the end of every cutscene. That looks like the IGN logo, hold up. I will not be able to unsee that. That truly just is the IGN logo. It's supposed to be a teleport, by the way. So what is the story exactly anyway? Well, you're a new recruit in the military. Effectively, it follows you going up through the ranks of the military and improving mission after mission. The other guy here is also your older brother. The whole first half of the story is basically just focusing on you improving and going up through the ranks. There's not really much else going on. You are just a grunt after all, why would you know classified information? That is until you and your brother gets sent on a special mission by the President of United Earth. Yes, that's the thing in this game. The President tries to set you up, managing to kill your brother, but you get teleported out by whoever this is. Within one cutscene, she convinces you that the President is actually evil and everything you did for your entire life doesn't really matter. You've been brainwashed. This is not a very convicted guy. Anyway, the president is power hungry, trying to silence everyone that disagrees with him and trying to get as much power as possible. Damn, they were only a few election cycles away from being right. A few missions later, you kill the president, and now the president yourself. I don't think that's how that works. And make out with that woman that you met once before. Yeah, this is a 90s story through and through. There's a comically bad villain, and after you defeat the bad villain, you get the chick. The cutscenes are low budget, the story isn't written well, the voice acting isn't great, but I mean, it was entertaining, I'm not gonna lie. I did want to watch them in a so bad it's good kind of way. I don't know, being a 90s kid, part of me just misses the 90s, and that just brought me back in time. So what about the gameplay? Well, believe it or not, it's not just a Doom clone. For starters, it's much higher quality than most other Doom clones. The gameplay that feels like Doom feels solid and fleshed out. It also doesn't feel like they just took Doom, reskinned Doom, and said, here you go, new game. On top of that, there's quite a bit of variety. As I mentioned, you go from world to world and get a lot of unique environments. But when you do, you will also get entirely new enemies and new weapons. The weapons are quite unique in this game. You get a fully automatic 18mm pistol. Don't ask me how that works. Weapons in your arsenal will oftentimes share ammo, but be totally different. For example, your shotgun is a double barrel laser shotgun. Pulling the trigger just fires one barrel, holding it down will sort of charge two barrels. This is your workhorse. As you would expect from a Doom clone, the shotgun is very strong. However, there's this weapon which doesn't feel like anything in Doom. In fact, it reminds me more of a weapon from Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, the concussion rifle. if the concussion rifle fired in burst, and that's terrifying. This thing is incredibly strong. You should be afraid of it when an enemy is holding it. But yeah, these weapons are quite unique. For example, there's one of them that has 3 barrels that shoots in random directions, so just get up close and destroy all the enemies. It also works quite good for getting rid of crowds. The weapons are varied and quite satisfying. I cannot complain. And the enemies are the same. I won't go through all of them because that would take all day, but you get a wide variety of enemies, none of which are annoying hit scanners, thank God. However, there's one very interesting different thing from the original Doom. Psionic abilities. That's what that number is in the bottom right. These abilities allow you to do things like fire lightning at an enemy, give yourself some health back, or release an absolutely devastating attack that kills anyone nearby. If you've played Dark Forces, that's just forced destruction.
Where did he go?
I've mentioned Dark Forces a few times, and honestly, that's the best way to describe this game. It's like a mix of Doom and Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. This makes it feel really unique, and I appreciate that about this game. However, not all is perfect, because this game certainly has a lot of problems. The biggest one is that it's really stingy with ammo, and this hurts the game a lot. You need to be very cautious with how much ammo you are using, and even if you are, you're barely scraping by. Now, Insomniac was attempting to make you use your abilities more. However, you don't get much energy for your abilities either. You do have a projectile that you can fire at enemies, which will give you some powers back. You have to go pick up those orbs to get the power back anyway. But these orbs still give you almost no energy back, so still you're scraping by. The end result is the game ends up feeling a lot more tedious than it should be. This isn't a stealth game, it's not a survival game. There's no reason to give me no ammo and no energy. And then there's 3 distinct levels that are significantly worse than the rest of the game. The first one is a timed level. Oh boy. You have to run through this area on a very strict time limit with enemies all over the place. You just have to avoid them and keep pushing these buttons to give you more time. These types of levels are almost never fun. They're usually just frustrating and annoying, and yeah, that's what this was. The next level has a bit of a backstory. So you know how you're going after the president of United Earth? It still makes me chuckle to say that. Well, on one level, you fight your way through a ton of enemies, walk into a room with a desk, and then a cutscene starts, and suddenly you're captured. What? I just killed hundreds of enemies. How am I captured now? How did this happen? Anyway, the president puts you up to a machine, and then the next level starts in your brain. You have no guns, you only have your psionic abilities. I've already explained why this is a problem. You don't get enough energy for this. And enemies are constantly spawning in. You can't run by them, you're just going to get stuck on them, and since you can't look up or down and you're using a controller, this is even more of a problem. They just bombard you with enemies and you have no energy the whole damn time. This went far past being challenging, straight into artificial difficulty. It does not feel fair to the player. And then the third level is actually the final boss. Since you are so limited on ammo and energy, this boss is damn near impossible. I had no ammo going into this boss, they didn't restock me with ammo going into the final boss of the game, and he has a ton of health. This basically means you have to use your psionic abilities to do damage to him. But to get more energy for that psionic ability, you need to shoot him with a weak projectile and then get up close. But if you get up close to him, he does a shotgun blast with a concussion rifle which does a ton of damage to you. This is one of the most flawed bosses I have ever seen. Also, just give me ammo! That really is the most frustrating thing. If I had ammo and energy, this wouldn't be a problem at all. In fact, it would probably be a good, albeit unremarkable final boss. After a while, I just said screw that and watched a playthrough because I knew it was the final boss. This is every 90s movie trope. You killed the bad guy, now you take over the bad guy, and you get the chick. Absolutely not worth. I'm glad I didn't waste my time. So, how do I feel about Disruptor? Well, I'm mixed. Sometimes it's a great Doom clone that's very unique from anything I've played, and other times it's just tedious, frustrating bullshit. In fact, now that I think about it, Insomniac shooters always have some sort of dumb artificial difficulty thing going on. Resistance 1 had bullet spongy enemies that could run through your own bullets and kill you. That game was hard. Resistance 2 was Resistance 2. Resistance 3 basically just gave up and said, here you go, have some Half-Life 2, and it was the best game out of the 3 for that. And for the record, that is not me saying that Insomniac shooters are all bad and terrible and you should hate them. I did just spend most of this video praising this game. Clearly, there's some merit to it, but also there's things to get frustrated at. So again, I'm mixed on this game. Would I recommend you play it though? Yeah, probably. It's not hard to get an emulator up and play this game. It's incredibly interesting to see where Insomniac started. It's genuinely a different feeling game, not just another Doom clone. There were so many Doom clones at that time. And ultimately this game did deserve to sell more, but it probably got hidden away in the sea of Doom clones. On top of that, this is 96, so we're starting to go full on 3D now, and Doom clones just didn't have the appeal they did a few years prior. It was both wrong place, wrong time for sales for that game, but right place, right time to get in contact with Sony and go on to Spyro. So yeah, if you're a fan of Insomniac, you probably found this really interesting. But I think that's all I have to say. I want to give a huge thanks to IntoTheAM. If you want some of these shirts or any of their other products, you can go to IntoTheAM.com/dragonshirts to get 10% off site-wide. Big thanks goes to everyone that joined me over on Twitch. You can click the bottom right over there if you want to go to my Twitch. If you subscribe, you can see my videos at least 1 week ahead of time. And of course, thank all of you for watching this video.